cool. It's one of the
So I think I'll start. Looks like most of the people from the waiting room are with us. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joanna Aragulska, and I'm Vice Provost and Dean of Global Affairs, and also a faculty member in the Department of Gender, Sexuality, and Women's Studies here at UC Davis. Before I begin my remarks, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the land on which UC Davis is located. For thousands of years, this land has been the home of Patwin people. Today, there are three federal. I don't know what you've heard, but somebody muted me. So I guess I'll start from. So hello, everybody. Before I begin my remarks, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the land on which UC Davis is located. For thousands of years, this land has been the home of Patwin people. Today, there are three federally recognized Patwin tribes: Kachil-Dihiti, Band of Wintun Indians of Colusa Indian Community, Kletsi-Dihi Wintun Nation, and Yoho-Dihi Wintun Nation. Patwin people have remained committed to the stewardship of this land over many centuries. It has been cherished and protected as elders have instructed the young through generations. We are truly honored and grateful to be here today on their traditional lands. So thank you so much for joining us today at our third forum on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. This forum series is one of the many collaborative ways that Global Affairs, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office, and Sustainability Office are working together to advance Sustainable Development Goals agenda. I'm happy to be joined by Renata Toll and Camille Kirk, as well as others from our SDGs teams this afternoon. Many of you know that, but I just wanted to remind everybody that the UN Sustainable Development Goals are the collection of 17 interlinked global goals designed as a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. They were adopted by all the UN member states, including the United States, in 2015 and are intended to be achieved by the year 2030. So sometimes you hear the reference to Agenda 30, Agenda for Sustainable Development. And of course, we as a public land grant institutions believe that UC Davis should play an important and special role in advancing this agenda. I also would like to take this opportunity to recognize our SDG interns who have been really core members of our SDG team this academic year. They are truly fantastic, helping out a number of SDGs events, including this event today, collecting information on SDG contributions around the campus, helping us reach out to students, running student sessions also with other universities around the world. So I really truly want to thank you and take this opportunity actually to congratulate to our interns who are graduating this spring. So I hope this job with SDG agenda will be a memorable one that you will reflect on later and say, oh, this was such a great experience. Today, we have invited speakers from across the campus to share brief snapshots of UC Davis projects that are contributing to SDG agenda in 4 areas: research, teaching, service, and operations. We also want to make the Spring Forum a space to hear from you. So we're going to be utilizing the Jamboard. And if you're not familiar yet with the Jamboard, we will explain in a few minutes how you can use it. It's actually really fun to use it. We hope that sharing our work with one another will pave the way for new partnerships, projects, ideas, and innovations from across UC Davis. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Camille Kirk. UC Davis Director of Sustainability and Campus Sustainability Planner. She is here to talk about very exciting campus initiative that is intended just to that, to advance our agenda. This will be the first UC Davis Voluntary University Review on Sustainable Development Goals. Camille, floor is yours.
Thank you, Joanna. So as Joanna mentioned, members of the UC Davis community, including faculty, staff, students, and others, are already doing incredible work that helps to advance all 17 of the SDGs at UC Davis. To better understand the reach of our work and how it impacts our progress towards the SDGs, the Sustainability, Global Affairs, and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion units are spearheading the first UC Davis Voluntary University Review, which will be completed this fall. When countries around the world agreed to the SDG agenda in 2015, a mechanism was created called voluntary national reviews. Nation states around the world have completed voluntary national reviews to take stock of their SDG efforts, to share experiences, strengthen policies and institutions, and mobilize stakeholders and partnerships to accelerate implementation of the SDG agenda. Many cities have embraced the SDG agenda and are beginning to align their priorities with the goals. In the US, New York, Los Angeles, and Pittsburgh are examples of cities that have completed voluntary local reviews. Universities are also considering ways to track their SDG efforts. To build on our own campus commitment to the SDG agenda, UC Davis is completing its first voluntary university review. The process will help us see the landscape of SDG activities across schools, colleges, and units, and where there are opportunities to strengthen our activities, connections, and collaborations to support these global goals. The Voluntary University Review is an ambitious project. We need participation from all parts of our campus so that we can show a full picture of UC Davis contributions across all 17 SDGs. We will be sharing this review with contacts and institutions around the world. We have designed an online portal where all members of the UC Davis community can share work that is addressing one or more sustainable development goals. We've already received responses from faculty, staff, and students across all of the colleges and schools of the university and working across all 17 SDGs. The most frequently cited so far are SDG 3, good health and well-being, SDG 10, reduced inequalities, and SDG 13, climate action. More than 30% of those who have responded work primarily on SDGs in California, and about 30% are focused internationally. These are only initial takeaways, and we hope to have much more to share in the coming weeks and months with more input from our campus community. It only takes about 10 minutes to fill out the questions in our survey, and we hope that you will submit your information. Our SDG interns have put the link in the chat. Please also share widely this link with others on campus so we can get as much information collected as possible. A robust dashboard will both help us complete a more comprehensive voluntary university review and will also help match faculty, staff, and students with valuable opportunities and partnerships. To facilitate discussion and information sharing at today's event, we will use Google Jamboard as mentioned, which is a virtual collaboration space. The information that you share today on Jamboard will directly inform our voluntary university review. So we've put a link to the Jamboard in the chat area. Please click the link to open the Jamboard on your own device. My colleague Kelly O'Day has just shared her screen so that everyone can see our collaborative Jamboard. We've divided the Jamboard into sections for research, teaching and learning, service, and operations on 2 different pages. And you can move between the 2 pages with the arrows at the top. You can see Kelly's doing that right now. Operations in this case refers to university administration activities, as well as the operations, maintenance, and upkeep of university systems and infrastructure to run our campus. Service activities in the case of this particular voluntary university review refers to those activities which can take place in a traditional classroom setting, but most often occur beyond a classroom setting and involve engagement with the local community. We invite you to add virtual sticky notes to the Jamboard. To add a sticky note, navigate to the menu on the left, click the sticky note icon, which is the 4th icon down, Type your information into the pop-up window, save and drag your sticky note to the appropriate section. It would be very helpful to us if you can include your name, your email address, your campus role, and the name of your project, course, or initiative. Or if you don't have a particular single project, you can certainly enter the general field of work that you're in. You're also welcome to add numbers of the SDG goals that you're working on, such as 5 for gender equality or 13 for climate action. We will keep the Jamboard open during the entire event, so feel free to add notes at any time. During the discussion portion of the event later on, we will revisit what's been shared on our Jamboard. With that, thank you for providing information for our voluntary university review. We could not do this without you, and it is now my pleasure to pass things over to Renetta Tull, our Vice Chancellor of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, who will introduce today's spotlight speakers. Thank you, Renetta.
Thank you, Camille, and hello to everyone. Today we have 4 spotlight segments to highlight important work that members of the UC Davis community are doing to support the SDGs. Our first spotlight is on service and will feature 2 student Arboretum ambassadors, Erin Schoemehl and Laura Gomez, who will share with us how the Arboretum and Public Garden are playing a vital role in the health and well-being of our community. Oshira, a student SDG intern with Global Affairs, will lead that session. Ari is a senior majoring in international relations with a minor in human rights, and she is passionate about working towards social justice and global peace. Our next session will showcase UC Davis research in support of the SDGs. And Michael Carter, Distinguished Professor of Agricultural and Resource Economics and Director of the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Markets, Risk and Resilience, will tell us about how they're helping to expand research capacity in Africa to combat poverty and food insecurity. And as you're looking at the chat, you'll see that there's more information about Michael's work that's going to be put into the chat. This will be followed by our spotlight on teaching activities, and it's teaching activities related to the SDGs. Professor Lee Tian, who works in the Department of Plant Sciences, is also co-director of the UC Davis Cannabis and Hemp Research Center. And Professor Lee Tian is going to tell us more about her involvement with the U21 Global Classroom Pilot Project and how it serves as a great example of innovation in teaching to advance the SDGs. She will be joined by Ashana Nayar, a senior who's majoring in biological sciences, who participated in the Global Classroom Project. And again, if you look in the chat, then you'll see more about some of that work. So please click on those links. And our final spotlight session will focus on campus operations. Joshua Moorjohn, Director of Energy and Engineering for Facilities, will provide an overview of the Big Shift project, which is a great example of climate action on campus to advance the SDGs. Please again, look in the chat for a link on that particular project. And for further information on our speakers today, again, I just want you to check out the links because there's a wealth of information there. And following our last spotlight session on operations, we're going to come to the Q&A and discussion portion of our event. And I'd like to remind all in our audience that they can submit their questions or comments at that time using the chat feature. So our chat is very active during this time, and we want you to use that for your Q&A. But you can also continue to add sticky notes on the Jamboard, and that's so we can all learn about your work and how it's helping to achieve the SDGs. As Camille mentioned, a little later in the program, we'll revisit our Jamboard to see how all of you are involved in the SDGs. So please make sure that you add your information there. Let's go ahead and get started and get going. Our first spotlight will be on service, and SDG intern Ari is going to get us started. Ari?
Hello, everybody. My name is Oshira, and I'm an SDG intern with Global Affairs. Today, I'm joined by Erin Schoemehl and Laura Gomez, who are both UC Davis students and Arboretum ambassadors. Erin is a third-year agriculture and environmental education major. Laura is a fourth-year human development communication double major. Alongside with Erin, she's one of the co-coordinators for the Arboretum Ambassadors Internship Program at the UC Davis Arboretum and Public Garden. Lara and Erin will share some details about how the Arboretum and Public Garden help to support the SDGs. So hi, Laura and Erin, thank you for joining us. Could you tell us a little bit about the Nature RX project and its importance for our campus and local community?
Yeah, so the Arboretum Ambassadors are part of the UC Davis Arboretum and Public Garden Learning by Leading internship program, focusing on environmental stewardship, education, and outreach. This year, we focused on Nature RX programming. Student teams in the L by L program have hosted a number of Nature RX workshops to encourage and inspire the community to enjoy outdoor spaces such as the Arboretum. As ambassadors, we recognize the importance of public health and well-being and the stressors that the campus community has faced during the pandemic.
So what Nature RX is an area of research and programming highlighting the beneficial relationship between nature spaces and mental and physical well-being. It's also part of the growing ecotherapy research field. Multiple studies have concluded that spending even a few hours each week in nature can improve mood, alertness, ability to concentrate, social connection, and an overall sense of well-being. Nature RX practices can include any therapeutic activity done in nature. One of the main goals of the Ambassador Program with the Nature RX project is to connect the campus community with the city of Davis and beyond. We strive to educate our participants on how the Arboretum is an inclusive space with an abundance of resources to help community members practice Nature RX.
Awesome. How is this initiative supporting the UN Sustainable Development Goals?
So through our programming, we have demonstrated and encouraged our visitors to practice 4 of the UN Sustainability Development Goals. We demonstrate our support for SDG number 3, good health and well-being, through our ambassador workshop, Nature-Based Self-Care, which we presented at the UC Davis Mental Health Initiative Conference this past January. Here, we provided tangible Nature RX recommendations such as green exercise, engaging with the outdoors, practicing mindfulness, or doing art projects in the Arboretum or your local nature spaces.
Nature RX recommendations also support the SDG number 15, Life on Land. By encouraging the community to practice Nature RX in the Arboretum, participants develop land appreciation, which is an aspect of practicing land sustainability. We also advocated for workshop participants to learn about the Arboretum's diverse collections that highlight pollinator-friendly, low water maintenance, California native vegetation. We also encourage visitors to practice land sustainability by creating their own micro gardens using plants from the Arboretum plant sales.
We also demonstrated our support for SDG number 10, reduced inequalities, with our most recent workshop, Nature RX and Equity in Green Spaces. This workshop focused on advocating for the importance of supporting BIPOC folks' access to nature. We highlighted both campus and regional organizations and advocacy spaces that provide opportunities for BIPOC communities to feel safe when spending time outside. We also referenced mental health resource centers on campus, as well as places in the Arboretum where visitors can practice Nature RX. We also shared resources where audiences can learn more about advocating for inclusive access to nature.
Lastly, we practice SDG number 4, quality education, throughout the content we produce as ambassadors and through the vision of the L by L program. We've collaborated with faculty, staff, and campus centers to inform the Nature RX content we've produced this year. We also referenced the environmental education standards for the 21st century when creating our content. As an environmental education internship, we strive to make each of our programs fun, informative, and easily understood by all. Through our Nature RX programming, we've demonstrated that implementing these SDGs in people's lifestyle is tangible.
The Nature RX project sounds like a wonderful way of raising people's awareness about the importance of our nature natural environment. I'm sure our audience would appreciate learning more about how they can help out. How can people get involved?
Right. So folks can get involved with NatureRx by designating time to practice mindfulness and activities outside. That's usually the first step.
We also encourage others to learn more about how to be advocates for inclusive green spaces where everyone can practice these NatureRx recommendations safely.
So to learn more about NatureRx, we invite you to our upcoming workshop, Gratitude and Gardening, hosted by the Arboretum Gateways Outreach Student Team this Friday, May 21st at 5:30 p.m. via Zoom, and I'll drop that link in the chat if you guys would like to register.
If you want to get more involved with the Arboretum, we encourage you to learn more about the Learning by Leading internship program at our website. Additionally, if you have any questions for us, you can reach us at arboretumambassadors@gmail.com. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Erin and Laura, for joining us today and for sharing some information about NatureRx and the Arboretum and Public Garden.
Well, thank you very much, Ari and Erin and Laura. It is really great to hear about the efforts to promote environmental awareness and health. And it's now time to begin our spotlight on research. And I'd like to hand it over to Michael Carter, who's going to tell us more about the valuable work they're doing in Africa to support sustainable development efforts. Michael?
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. It's great to be with you all. Let me apologize that as soon as I finish, I have a bunch of students waiting who are very nervous about their class project for a course called Economics of Global Poverty. So quite relevant to our discussion, but I'm gonna have to jump off. A couple of people from my lab, Sophie Javers and Tara Chu, are going to be able to stay on, and they will help handle any questions that might come up. So let me just say a bit about the Lab for Markets, Risk, and Resilience. It's based here at UC Davis. I'm a professor in the Agricultural and Resource Economics Department. I primarily work on poverty dynamics in Latin America and different parts of Africa. The lab itself is graciously funded by the US government. We're a virtual consortium. So we get a budget of $4 to $5 million a year that we use to fund different research projects that are based in US universities and or in African universities to study issues of poverty, particularly in rural areas. We currently are funding about 25 different projects. Most of these projects have a span of 4 to 5 years. The projects that I work on here that are based here at UC Davis involve multiple graduate students on campus as well as undergraduate students. I just had an undergraduate student who survived, I guess is the right word, the course I teach on economics of global poverty last year, and this year she wrote an absolutely outstanding senior honors thesis using some data actually coming from a project I'm going to mention briefly in just a moment. Sophie, my colleague Sophie, is going to be posting a link to our lab's webpage, and we have a particular page we set up explicitly connecting a number of our projects to specific sustainable development goals. So you can go there for a look at some of these other 25 projects and how they tie in. What I'd like to do, rather than sort of bore you with sort of a laundry list of things we're doing, is just take my last couple of minutes to say just a very few words about one project in particular, and hope that that gives you a deeper insight into how the research that's being done at UC Davis can help contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals. So the work I'm going to talk about is work in the northern parts of Kenya. It's a pastoralist region, meaning people primarily get their livelihood from raising animals. It's a very arid area. It's subject to frequent droughts. The droughts can be totally devastating for families. It's one of the poorest places on earth. When I first started going there, the government of Kenya was trying to transition from annual emergencies, meaning they would discover there was a drought in this part of the country, and people were absolutely desperate for food and a way to sustain their families. And they said, we can't have an emergency every year because it's not an emergency if it happens every year. So they tried to transition towards a model that would make regular cash payments available to really poor families. And when I say really poor families, roughly 40% of the population in this area lives on 40 cents a day. So if you can sort of put that, and that's in US adjusted dollar purchasing power parity, as we economists call it, terms. So these are people who are living really at a razor thin margin. We got involved in this because we felt the standard approaches was basically throwing money at the problem, but not actually solving the problem. They were treating the symptoms, which was extreme poverty, but not understanding how did people fall into that situation? How could you get an area of the world where that many people are living on that thin a margin of existence? So one of the projects that's highlighted on the SDG page that's for which Sophie provided the link is on asset building and asset protection targeted at very poor women in this northern Kenyan region. So what we're doing is we're working with a novel kind of what you can call an asset building program. So it's taking really poor people where they are and trying to, first of all, build up their business skills, give them small asset grants. Small asset grants means about $100 a person, and try to get them in a position where they can move forward with that fairly meager bit of resources. But is that enough to really get them a leg up and on a path where they can graduate? The second element of the program that's really important and becomes increasingly important with climate change is if you help someone build up their assets and build up their capacities to do something with those assets, they yet are going to face additional shocks. So the core of this is to really address SDG 1, which is poverty reduction. The first part of that is to cut severe global poverty in half by the year 2030. And we're very much trying to do that and learn how can you actually take people who are literally at the bottom of the global heap, how can you help them? How can you help them move forward? The other thing we're really focusing on in this particular program is gender equality. So one of the things that we see in this particular area of Kenya is there's a very stylized division of labor. I'm not going to try to make anybody's hair catch on fire by describing social norms that we might find somewhat surprising and perhaps bothersome. But one of the things that we definitely observe is what I call risk shifting. So in this kind of environment, when things go bad and the animals are doing poorly, there's a tendency of the male spouses to say to the females, well, things are kind of bad out here, and normally I send some resources home because, again, the men are often moving with the animals looking for pasture, but I'm not going to do that now because I can't afford to. So you figure out how to keep the kids alive, right? So this notion that on women is being thrust the burden of dealing with risk. They're sort of left holding the bag, if you will. So part of what we are trying to do is develop insurance mechanisms which can allow women to protect the assets they have. So when you put this in combination with a program that's building up their assets and then protecting their assets, we hope we are both empowering women, which is one of the things we're looking at closely, but also in the end, we're really going to address deep-seated malnutrition of their children and really make some progress, we hope, towards this SDG 1 of cutting severe global poverty in half by the year 2030. This is all taking place in an environment of extreme climate change. There are no climate change deniers out there in northern Kenya because they live it every day. They see the changes every day. I think Sophie may post something in the chat box here. We had a very nice blog that was done by the UC Davis program on climate change that was put together. And if you're interested particularly in how climate change is affecting women and families in this very harsh kind of environment, you can listen to this blog. It's something we're quite proud of in terms of trying to address this problem. So that's just one little snippet. As I say, we have 25 projects. They all generally tend to be focused on SDG 1, on global poverty reduction. Most of the work is focused on East, West, and Southern Africa, a little bit in other parts of the world. But that's part of what we try to do. And I think we're very privileged to sit in a well-resourced university like UC Davis, in a well-resourced country like the United States. And we have the luxury of collecting data, of really trying to understand what drives poverty in particular kinds of economic systems, and then use our best resources and our best ideas to come up with novel solutions that we think can make a difference for people who are much less advantaged than we are. So a very quick introduction, and again, my colleagues will be able to stay on and answer any further questions you might have about the work that we're doing. So thank you all very much, and I'm really happy to be participating in this effort, and so glad that UC Davis is giving priority to contributing towards the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you.
Hey, great. Thank you so much, Michael. And it's really wonderful to hear about the work that you're doing to support research in Africa. And we've learned a lot. Thank you. And so now we're going to look at teaching, and Lee Tian from the Department of Plant Sciences is going to tell us more. She is joined by Ashina Nayar, a student involved in the U21 Global Plant Biochemistry course. And so I turn it over to you all. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. I also want to start by thanking Liz, Jenny, Jolene, and Tom, all from Global Affairs, for really spending the whole quarter in fall 2020 to train the faculty on how to set up these online collaborative learning modules. So as mentioned, I taught a plant biochemistry class in winter 2021, working with our collaborative team at Shanghai Jiao Tong University. We developed a module together on traditional medicine, plant natural products, and also the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So my class, students learn about biochemical pathways, like very dense, but then the collaborative class, they learn about traditional medicine, kind of entry-level class. So, so the module we designed is to really having the students from both classes work together on a group e-poster. So with that e-poster, they should introduce the use of a selected medicinal plant. So they were given different options. So they have a choice of working on a plant of their choice to explain, their use in traditional medicine, and also the functional components of the plant. Then they need to discuss the connection of this plant with our principal SDG. So that's good health and well-being. And then, so that is the section, actually it's my favorite section, is when students need to discuss how this medicinal plant may address additional SDGs. So they need to go through all 17 SDGs, finding the connections, and also explain how, by either cultivating or somehow developing the functional components of this medicinal plant can address additional SDGs. And so students in the UC Davis class also presented this the e-posters to the class, and Liz and Jenny actually joined us for that Zoom meeting presentation. It was really fun. And there's also an individual component to this module. So that is for the students to respond to individual reflection questions. So they share their thoughts on their, if they have met their learning objectives. So any feedback they have on improving this class and also this online module. So I was really happy to see that actually all of the students consider that they have achieved the learning objectives of this module. So for global classroom, for gaining additional cultural perspective of UN SDGs. And then they also want to explore more on the UN SDGs, because actually most of the students, actually I can address, like they didn't even know about UN SDGs before this class module. So now they become really interested. They also provided really valuable insights and feedback. I don't have time to share all of them on how to improve, right, the scheduling like platform to use, so that actually we can really utilize this information for really optimize further, the online learning on UN SDGs. So just to summarize, I was really most impressed by the creativity of all the students and their determination and efforts to really accomplish this assignment, right? Despite the many barriers they had to tackle. So there was really a difficult time, but they did really, really well. And now I want to turn this over to Ashna. Ashna actually is a fantastic student. She led one of the groups because we divided the class into different groups, and she did a great job in really help really coordinate the students on this module.
Thank you, Dr. Tan. Just wanted to thank you for this opportunity, as well as everybody else who's handling this. I would like to say my experience as a student doing the project in your class was it was an overall enlightening one. I thought the project not only was an effective way for us to apply the knowledge that we learned in class, but it also allowed us to speak with other students and learn about other different cultural perspectives. Contacting the international students and speaking with them together allowed us to have different outlooks on the project. And based on what Dr. Tian said, we did have 2 different types of classes that were working on it. So merging them together, as well as having the cultural differences, actually allowed us to make our project as good as it could be, having 2 different perspectives and going back and forth. I thought that was a wonderful way for us to emulate the knowledge that we learned. And one of the biggest takeaways or eye-opening experiences was definitely really realizing how something so small, such as a crop, for my team, we learned about bitter melon. Having something so small could actually connect to so many different global things, such as multiple SDGs. We discussed as a team how the crop could play a really big part in we can battle poverty with it. We can battle diversity with it, because if the crop has so many great medicinal properties, then we can apply it and people can plant it. And it could also do economic advantages and things like that. And I just thought that one of the most beautiful parts of this project was applying our classroom knowledge, not only to our lives, but also extending that knowledge to think about how it could benefit people globally. And Dr. Tian's right. I didn't know anything about the UN SDGs until I took that class. So I definitely would say that I am very much more interested on, based on the project class that I took, on how we could further develop these goals and how we can actually reach them as a community. And I think Dr. Carter also talked about how, we're close and we're fortunate that the US has all these materials and researches. And I also agree with that. So yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you very much to both of you, and to Professor Tian and also to Ashna. Thank you very much for participating. And it's really amazing how we can use technology to bring together faculty, students, and learning to learn about and support the SDGs through innovative international partnerships. I know the first time I learned about SDGs, I was really excited too. And for our final session, we're now going to be looking at operations. And Josh Moore-John has joined us. And Josh is the Director of Energy and Engineering for Facilities for UC Davis. And Josh is going to provide an overview of the Big Shift project. Got to make sure that I say that properly. And how it supports the SDGs by moving our campus to a carbon neutral future. And so, Josh, please go ahead, take it away.
Thank you. All right, that's a great intro, and yes, it is a fun name, The Big Shift. The tagline is it's messy, but it's worth it. But we really like it because it does represent a very big shift for the campus. So I just want to briefly talk about what the shift is and why it's a shift and why it's important. And this is a project that it really is going to affect everyone on campus. And if you haven't been on campus in the last year, you'll see it when you get back there, because they've been digging up streets all over campus to make this happen, at least the initial piece of it. So as far as the SDGs, it would definitely touch on 7 about energy, 9 on infrastructure, innovative, sustainable infrastructure, and 11 about sustainable cities. And really this is a project about, it's about a heating system for the campus, but it's not just about heating. It's really about the whole energy supply to the buildings on campus, and taking a real shift in how we think about that and how we approach that. And so it's something that most people probably don't think about much, and that's good unless you're cold in your classroom. But if you've ever thought about how the classrooms get heated, and you didn't know, and hopefully the link's in the chat, you guys can explore it there as well. But there's a lot of information about how the campus gets heated. But the bottom line is right now it's heated with natural gas. That natural gas for most buildings on campus is making steam, which is distributed underground to the buildings on campus, and it's heating the air in the campus buildings through a heating system in the buildings. But the source is natural gas. And with the carbon neutrality goals that we have as a campus, we need to take a real hard look at that, because that's about 40% of our footprint for the main campus in terms of greenhouse gases. So not only the carbon goals, but there's also the infrastructure and the renewal that's needed. A lot of these systems were put in when the campus first started, and they've been put in over the years, and many of our heating systems are 50, 60 years old. So they're up for renewal. And so it's a great opportunity for the campus to look really hard at what's the way to do this for the future, and what's the innovative approach that we can take as a university campus. And so the shift that we're making it doesn't sound big when you say it. It's moving from steam to hot water. But I'll talk just for a minute about why that's a big shift. It doesn't seem that different, but the first thing that's different is the temperature. The steam right now goes out at around 350 degrees Fahrenheit. The hot water is going to be down at 150 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a big difference, because it's going to lose a lot less energy as it gets distributed to the buildings. But the big opportunity at a lower temperature heating system is all the different ways you can then heat that water. With steam, the only way to do it really is with gas. And so we're tied to that carbon footprint. But when we can get off of steam onto something like hot water, that opens up all kinds of opportunities for renewable and alternative energy sources. And so that's the big reason that we're doing this, is that it's a pathway to carbon neutrality. It's a pathway to electrification, really deep electrification, which is in line with these sustainable goals, development goals. And so the reason it's a way for us to go to electrification, the main reason is that it allows us to take advantage of the district cooling system on campus. So like we have a heating system that heats all the buildings, we also have a cooling system. That cooling system is actually collecting heat from all the buildings to cool them off, and then throwing that heat out into the atmosphere back at the chiller plants where it cools the water down that cools the buildings. We're going to take advantage of that cooling system and tie it into our heating system, so we don't have to throw that heat away anymore. We can use it to make hot water. So that's through a process called heat recovery. So that makes our energy systems about 5 times more efficient. And that's the big step forward. It's also has the potential to fully electrify our heating systems, which is great, because the electric supply to the campus is on the path to being 100% renewable. So the big shift is a shift of how we're heating the campus, but it's also a shift of really our energy systems and how we approach the district energy for the campus, and the opportunity to do both deep electrification for the campus and to get onto a pathway to carbon neutrality along with fully renewable electricity. So that's the goal. And if you are on campus, you'll see the first big step is the first district that we're converting to hot water. That's underway. It's been underway for about a year now. And they've been putting pipes in the ground, and now they're just starting converting buildings over to hot water. And then we're working with a group on campus on what the next districts will be and how fast we can move this project along. But it is going to eventually cover all the main buildings on campus and tie them all into this new heating system, which is really the system for the future. and will set us up well for where we're going. So I'll, with that, turn it over to whoever's next.
Hey, well, Josh, thank you. Thank you very much. And it's really great to hear about all the work that's going on to make UC Davis the most sustainable campus in the country. We're really excited about that. And of course, you know, since we've been gone for a while, more work has been able to be done so I think when we all get back, we'll see some of the results of all of that work and that good planning. So thank you. Okay, so we want to open the discussion for questions and for comments. And I'd just like to remind everyone to add any SDG projects that you want to share on the Jamboard. I saw some of them coming through, and you're remembering to put your name and your department and all of those different kinds of things that they asked for. The directions are there, as well as the SDG that you're working on. So if you haven't done so, please do that. So let's see if there are any questions, and you can feel free to ask about any of the projects that you've heard about that were spotlighted today, or other questions about the VUR, which is our Voluntary University Review, or any aspect of UC Davis engagement with the SDG agenda. So let's see if we have any questions. And you know what, we can do two different things. You can put your questions in the chat, but if you want to raise your hand and just sort of go to the front of the stack, then that is okay too. That might be a little bit easier to manage. And so you're welcome to do that as well. And that way we'll get a chance to see who has a question. Okay. Just as a reminder for the Jamboard, it was adding your name, email, affiliation, the name of your project, course, or initiative to the Jamboard. Okay, so let's see if we can have some other questions, and I'm going to look and see. I think that there's a question that some of our group wanted to ask as well. And Joanna, did you move to the front? You sure did. How about you go right ahead?
So I was actually going to ask Erin and Laura about Arboretum, where I do go, but I always wonder if I should do something else more. How can I kind of engage more or really gain more benefits from being there, visiting the Arboretum, if you have suggestions?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually have the community of Davis is actually really engaged, like just the residents in itself. So we have many volunteer opportunities for just general community members, and you can see that on our website. And you know, the Arboretum is also a living museum, and we have many like exhibits and posters regarding the species we have there. And it's also a huge research facility in itself. It's globally renowned for our oak exhibits. And so, you know, just going around and like reading up on all the species we have and stuff, I think is a great way to also make your visit educational as well as recreational. So I don't know if Erin has anything else to add.
Yeah, usually in person we host events. So hopefully in the fall, if we're back in person, there will be like events that you can attend, including like Biodiversity Museum Day, where the entire campus becomes a really cool interactive space. And so like the Arboretum ambassadors are one internship group, but there's so many more, 10 plus, that are bound to be hosting some events throughout the year. So be sure to look on our website. I'm sure there's a calendar that will highlight some of that.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I know we have a question in the chat, and I saw that. But before I get to that, I really want to thank Tara Chu for coming to substitute for Michael Carter, and wanted to have a question to also honor the expertise that she's bringing to the table here. And so Tara, if you can tell us what are some top ways to improve domestic research capacity in Africa in the long run?
Oh, honestly, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Um, in terms of improving domestic research capacity, I think another question we ask is how can we use domestic research capacity to actually improve African research capacity? One of the things we found is that those kinds of collaborations can be beneficial for both sides of the ocean, in that not only can African researchers learn a lot by collaborating with US researchers, but US researchers can learn a lot about how to more effectively work in these countries. They can learn what kind of research is being demanded, not coming up with our own solutions and throwing them on populations in Africa, but learning what kind of questions are coming from the continent itself, and then how to work with local government officials, local organizations, local farmers. That can be huge and make all the difference in terms of finding research solutions and making sure they go into policy and program development. So we have an initiative where we're actually partnering with African research institutions and giving a huge amount of our money to African research institutions to put them in the leadership role with their own knowledge, skills, and ideas. So it's called Advancing Local Leadership Innovation Networks, or All In, as we call it. And it's one way we're trying to do exactly what you described.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much. Interestingly enough, I was talking this morning to a person who is actually working in Rwanda right now, Bimi Disu, who was one of our guests for an SDG forum in the past. And so it's good to hear that the process is to work with the different researchers who are already there to actually elevate and amplify the work that they're doing. So thank you very much for sharing that. And now I'll go to the questions in the chat. So Tom Rosa-Molina has a question for Professor Tian and Ashina. And the question is, what is the biggest obstacle to collaborating with students and faculty in another part of the world?
Let's hear from the students' perspective first.
Sounds good.
Yeah, of course. So I think the biggest obstacle that I faced since I was like the team lead was definitely coming into contact with the students in the very beginning. And that was just because our quarter had just begun, but they were on break. So contacting them did take a little bit longer. And not only that, but I believe that the students were from China, so they don't have access to the same like websites or apps that we do. They don't have access to like the same social media. So it was a little difficult finding something that all of us could communicate on. But luckily, Dr. Tian did help us and let us know we had like a Canvas site that those students could use. Like it was a different Canvas site. And we also figured out that if we sent a Zoom link, a Zoom invitation, those students had no problem joining it. And then we were also able to set up WeChat. So even though we had those obstacles, it wasn't like it was impossible. It just took a little time. And in that time period where we were waiting for the students to get back at us, we did start on our project. It's not like, oh, we're not going to do anything until they contact us. It was kind of like okay, like they know that they have to do something and we know that we need to do something. So we're going to do the best that we can in terms of getting our part done. And then we can all like come together and collaborate. So that was my experience. So yeah, that was a really good question.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. It's so interesting because I didn't learn about WeChat until I went overseas and was trying to figure out how to connect, particularly with students that I was working with there. And so they were telling me to download it on my phone, and then that's what we use from there on out. So thank you. I want to go to Julie Garner's question. Julie talked about said this is so much valuable information, and wanted to know about the SDG that is most lacking here at UC Davis, and you know what can Julie do to help? And I think Joanna, between Joanna and Camille, you can take this, and then I'll just leave it to the rest of you, to you two, to kind of close us out since we're getting toward the end at the same time. And Julie, thanks so much for asking your question.
So I don't know if I can fully answer. I actually had a question for Josh, but Jolene, we've done some surveys and we're trying to pull information together. So do we get I know from the survey, actually we are involved in it, all 17, right? And a lot of them are actually embedded here in California. So there is this kind of an interesting that a lot of times we think about SDGs as a global only, but that's all happening locally. So I know that part, but which one is the, well, we're trying to discover actually by having these forums and engagement. We're trying, Julie, to get it actually, to learn what people are not talking about, except that if you go on Michael's Carter website, all of them, right? Every project has almost 17 goals involved. But I don't know, Jolene, if we have the one that we know that are sort of lacking.
No, I think of what you said, we do know that every SDG is being worked on. So it's just the depth and breadth of that work on each SDG. And that's exactly, Julie, why we're doing this voluntary university review process. So please do, everyone submit their input into this process, because we don't want a skewed picture. We want as a complete picture as we can get. And then we will start to see patterns through this information of where we can really strengthen and do more collaboration. So it's an excellent question, and it's exactly what we're trying to do right now.
So I want to actually ask Josh the question. So Josh, we're switching to water. At the same time, we hear all the time that we're in a drought, the worst drought. So how this is gonna work? I mean, are we recycling the water? How, if you could explain that part. I know we are very conscious, but I just want to make sure that we also not creating impression that in the middle of drought, we're gonna be pumping water.
Yeah. No, thanks for the question. That's actually one of the most common questions we get, and I should have brought that up. This system is gonna actually use much less water because it is, like you said, it's circulating water. It's a closed loop system. So we're not actually using up any water. We're just recirculating it through the pipes. So the steam right now, it loses a lot more water in the process than the hot water system when it's just going to be circulating through the pipes. So it'll actually be a water saving project. Thanks.
I am muted. We almost on time, so I want to thank everybody. I want to thank all of you who spoke, also those of you who put in our Jamboard some information. Please don't be shy, we can follow up. It's amazing actually what we do on the campus, because I start making notes, just the areas, and it's ranging from food, nutrition, gender, inequalities, climate change, and then heating, obviously energy, poverty, infrastructure, and then we're doing teaching, and then we're doing the pleasure and arboretum and well-being. So it's a phenomenal contribution. I think we need to start telling our story better and better, because it's such an incredible wealth of information. But all of you have been pointed out repeatedly to interconnectedness. This is not one. Nobody said, oh, I just only work on that one goal. Everybody start listing numerous goals. And this is like sort of scratching the surface. So I think that kind of interdisciplinary approach, interconnected, complex way of addressing issues, engaging different groups, different knowledges, different units on the campus. I think that's what makes so exciting about the SDG agenda. And of course, the fact that we're thinking about different audiences, and we're talking about inequalities, and we're thinking about an inclusion, and we're thinking about diversity. That's where I really makes me always extremely excited about being part of these conversations. So thank you so much again to everybody for being on this late afternoon with us, for sharing the information, and please continue to do so. And if something comes out to you after, you know where to find us to help us to do the VUR, the Voluntary University Review. We're going to be one of the first universities doing it. Not the first, but one of the first. So thank you so much to everybody. And goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.